Do the spiritual work to find out for yourselves, and please do it now. Time is running out. In one of our last videos named The Abomination of Desolation, we discussed the prophecy shared by Jesus Christ about the destruction of the Jews and the Second Temple. The sign he gave that this prophecy was about to be fulfilled was that the city of Jerusalem would be compassed by armies. This prophecy saw fulfillment in 70 AD. The Encyclopedia Britannica says the Siege of Jerusalem. The Siege of Jerusalem, Roman military blockade of Jerusalem during the First Jewish Revolt, the fall of the city marked the effective conclusion of a 4-year campaign against the Jewish insurgency in Judea. The Romans destroyed much of the city, including the Second Temple. The majority of information on the siege comes from the copious notes of Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. In that video, we also discussed how this prophecy would see dual fulfillment in the latter days at the second coming of Jesus Christ. Today, we are going to discuss how we can identify when this would be fulfilled. In Doctrine and Covenants, section 45, "And this I have told you concerning Jerusalem, and when that day shall come, shall a remnant be scattered among all nations, but they shall be gathered again, but they shall remain until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." In Luke 21, Jesus speaks of some of the signs of his coming. "Now these things he spake unto them concerning the destruction of Jerusalem. And then his disciples asked him, saying, Master, tell us concerning thy coming." In Luke chapter 21, "All will be fulfilled when the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Verily I say unto you, this generation, the generation when the times of the Gentiles shall be fulfilled, shall not pass away till all be fulfilled." So why is it so critical that we know when the times of the Gentiles would be fulfilled? Because it will enable us to identify the generation of people living on the earth that would witness every event of the second coming. Now, that is absolutely insane. I just wish more people realized how amazing this is. Every time you hear someone saying, "Oh, the second coming is 100 years away," this prophecy will blow that out of the water. Now, let's really dive into this. In Elder Parley P. Pratt's book, A Voice of Warning, he states the following: "Having taken a view of the Old Testament prophets concerning prophecy and its fulfillment, and having shown clearly that nothing but a literal fulfillment was intended, the objector may inquire whether the same mode will apply to the predictions contained in the New Testament. We will therefore bring a few important instances of prophecy and its fulfillment from the New Testament, after which we shall be prepared to enter the vast field which is still future. One of the most remarkable prophecies in Sacred Writ is recorded by Luke in chapters 20 to 24. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." This prophecy involves the fate of Jerusalem and the temple, and the whole Jewish nation, for at least 1800 years. About the year 70, the Roman army compassed Jerusalem. The disciples remembered the warning which they had been given them by their Lord and Master 40 years before, and fled to the mountains. The city of Jerusalem was taken after a long and tedious siege, in which the Jews suffered the extreme of famine, pestilence, and the sword, filling houses with the dead, for the want of a place to bury them, while the women ate their own children, for want of all things. In this struggle there perished in Judea near 1.5 million Jews, besides those taken captive. Their country was laid waste, their city burned, their temple destroyed, and the miserable remnant dispersed abroad into all nations of the earth, in which situation They have continued ever since, being driven from one nation to another, often falsely accused of the worst crimes, for which they have been banished, and their goods confiscated. Indeed, they have been mostly accounted as outlaws among the various nations. The soles of their feet have found no rest, and they have been a hiss and a byword, and people have said, "These are the people of the Lord, and are gone forth out of this land." During all of this time, the Gentiles have possessed the land of Canaan, and trodden underfoot the holy city where their forefathers worshipped the Lord. Now, in this long captivity, the Jews have never lost sight of the promises respecting their return. Their eyes have watched and failed with longing for the day when they might possess again the blessed inheritance bequeathed to their forefathers, when they might again rear their city and temple, and re-establish their priesthood, and worship as in the days of old. Indeed, they have made several attempts to return, but were always frustrated in their attempts. For it was an unbearable decree that Jerusalem should be trodden down by the Gentiles, until the time of the Gentiles should be fulfilled. Elder Pratt here is teaching that following the destruction of the Jews in AD 70, and despite their scattered state, there would come a time in which they were literally gathered and returned to their ancestral homeland of Israel. This gathering of the Jews is known as the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled. In the Church's student manual it states, "Until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." Luke 21 is the only place where this phrase, times of the Gentiles, appears in the Bible. The phrase also appears 3 times in latter-day Revelation. In New Testament times, the gospel was preached first to Jews, then to Gentiles. In the latter days, the message of the restored gospel is to go first to Gentile nations and then to the Jews. The period of time when the Gentiles have precedence in receiving the gospel is called the times of the Gentiles. So, why is that period called the times of the Gentiles? It is simply the period when the restored gospel was to go to the Gentiles. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Initially to the Gentiles, and then to the Jews. President Joseph Fielding Smith stated, "The times of the Gentiles commenced shortly after the death of our Redeemer. The Jews soon rejected the gospel, and it was then taken to the Gentiles. The times of the Gentiles have continued from that time until now." President Smith spoke further about the fulfillment of the times of the Gentiles. Jesus said the Jews would be scattered among all nations, and Jerusalem would be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles were fulfilled. The prophecy in section 45 of the Doctrine and Covenants regarding the Jews was literally fulfilled. Jerusalem, which was trodden down by the Gentiles, is no longer trodden down, but is made the home for the Jews. They are returning to Palestine, and by this we may know that the times of the Gentiles are near their close. Wow. Hold on a minute. President Fielding Smith here is explaining that the times of the Gentiles has already been fulfilled. The Jews have returned to their ancestral homeland. He also distinguishes that the time of the Gentiles being fulfilled and closing are 2 different things. The restored gospel will not go to the Jews in earnest until the times of the Gentiles are closed. Now, he stated this in 1966. That means that by 1966, the generation that would live to see the second coming was already identified. Now, just so we're all aware and it's clear, this is roughly the baby boomer generation. Every time there is a discussion on the second coming, you will immediately be met with resistance. People will often say, "We've been told for ages that it's happening, but it still isn't here. It must be 100 years away or more." And they may vaguely reference some past prophetic quotes on the subject. And look, that is perfectly normal. They don't yet understand this prophecy and how it pinpoints those that would live to see the second coming. Armed with this information about the generation, it will absolutely shock you at how strikingly accurate our apostles and prophets have been on the timing. Elder Bruce R. McConkie stated the following, "The prophet Joseph Smith said, 'There are those of the rising generation who shall not taste death till Christ comes.' Elder McConkie explained who would constitute the rising generation. The rising generation is the one that has just begun. Thus, technically, children born on April 6, 1843, that would be the first members of that rising generation, and all children born, however many years later, to the same parents would still be members of that same rising generation. It is not unreasonable to suppose that many young men had babies at the time of this prophecy and also had other children as much as 50 or 75 years later, assuming, for instance, that they were married again to younger women. This very probable assumption would bring the date up to, say, the second decade in the 20th century, and the children so born would be members of that same rising generation of which the prophet spoke. Now, if these children lived to the normal age of men, generally, they would they would be alive well past the year 2000. So here Elder McConkie clarified, well over 40 years ago, that this generation, as taught by Joseph Smith, would live well past the year 2020. Is that not, or 2000, is that not true of the baby boomer generation? Are they not still alive in 2023? Keep in mind, though, that generation will not live forever, and thus, for some to live unto the second coming, it cannot be 100 years away by any stretch of the imagination. There are so many quotes highlighting the timing via this generation, it's truly amazing. Here are some from Russell M. Nelson. In 1974, he said, "Our duty is to raise up a generation of men and women worthy to receive the coming of the Lord, for he will come to Jackson County, Missouri, to be sustained as King of Kings, and he will come also to Israel to be hailed as Lord of Lords. Then his millennial reign will be ushered in. You young, strong, and faithful men and women will bear the burden of the kingdom of God upon the earth as these days of destiny come." Now just quickly note the timing of that. 1974. That generation that would live to see the second coming were tasked by Elder Nelson at the time to prepare their children to be the people that receive the Lord. Then in 2022, he said the following: "One crucial element of this gathering is preparing a people who are able, ready, and worthy to receive the Lord when he comes again, a people who have already chosen Jesus Christ over this fallen world, a people who rejoice in their agency to live the higher, holier laws of Jesus Christ. I call upon you, my dear brothers and sisters, to become this righteous people." Then in 2022, President Russell M. Nelson tells us that you get to decide if you are going to be those people alive today that would live to see the second coming and receive the Lord at his coming. Or how about this gem from David A. Bednar just a week ago at a devotional at Snow College? Elder Bednar shared that while he was in Rexburg, he sat by President Gordon B. Hinckley at a dinner one evening. President Hinckley said to him emphatically, "David, this is the greatest season in the history of the restored church." Then he continued, not speaking about me individually, but about our generation, "I only have one regret. I will not be here to see it, but you will." Now, this is incredible. How could President Hinckley be so sure that Elder Bednar, or in more broad terms, Elder Bednar's generation, would live to see the events of the second coming fulfilled? Because he knew the generation. He knew the generation that would be alive, that would live to see them fulfilled. And Elder Bednar lives in that generation. Now that our minds are crystal clear on the generation, let's discuss the signs of the second fulfillment of the prophecy shared by Jesus Christ. Let's talk about exactly what this generation would witness. In short, we will focus on those prophecies contained in Doctrine and Covenants, section 45. Russell M. Nelson, when discussing the effects of COVID-19 on the church, stated the following: "Often when the Lord warns us about the perils of the last days, he counsels thus: 'Stand ye in holy places, and be not moved.'" Now, President Nelson was a heart surgeon professionally, and he approaches his talks and references with that same surgical precision. Rather than simply referencing Doctrine and Covenants 45, verse 32, he chose to include in that reference verse 31 about the desolating sickness, thus connecting the desolating sickness with COVID-19. President Nelson then went on to teach, "We live in a time prophesied long ago when all things shall be in commotion, and surely men's hearts shall fail them, for fear shall come upon all people." That was true before the pandemic, and it will be true after. Commotion in the world will continue to increase. In contrast, the voice of the Lord is not a voice of a great tumultuous noise, but it is a still voice of perfect mildness, like a whisper, and it pierces even to the very soul. In order to hear this still voice, you too must be still. For a time, the pandemic has cancelled activities that would normally fill our lives. Soon we may be able to choose to fill that time again with the noise and commotion of the world, or we can use our time to hear the voice of the Lord, whispering his guidance, comfort, and peace. Quiet time is sacred time that will facilitate personal revelation and instill peace. So, brothers and sisters, has the generation lived to see the fulfillment of this desolating sickness? Absolutely. Let's check that one off. Verse 32 speaks of the need for the saints at this time to stand in holy places. Just as counseled in the time of the early saints in Jerusalem, we are commanded to stand in holy places in order to receive prophetic counsel. In the student manual, Stand in the Holy Place, it reads, Elder Bruce R. McConkie of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, referring to the events leading up to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, stated that the counsel that the saints should then stand in the holy place meant that they should assemble together where they could receive prophetic guidance that would preserve them from the desolations of the day. And modern scriptures refer to standing in holy places. It has been an incredibly eye-opening experience for me personally to witness just how accurately this has been fulfilled. Can you remember any other time in your lives in which people struggled to heed prophetic counsel than since COVID occurred in 2020? I can't. Saints within the church have been making their positions rejecting prophetic counsel so clear that we are literally witnessing them lift up their voices to curse God and die. Verse 33, And there shall be earthquakes also in diverse places. We have been witnessing earthquakes in extremely diverse places, some in places they do not historically occur. On the 18th of March in 2020, the Salt Lake area experienced an earthquake and the angel sitting atop the temple dropped his trumpet. For more symbolic information on that, see our video, No More Angels on Temples, for a breakdown. The world has also experienced in the last 23 years more than 58 earthquakes that have killed more than 100 people, 316,000 in Haiti, 50,000 in Turkey and Syria, 50,000 in Iran, 80,000 in Pakistan, 20,000 in India, 230,000 in Indonesia, 20,000 in Japan, 87,500 in China, and so on and so forth. We are certainly seeing earthquakes in diverse places. Now let's continue in verse 33. And many desolations, yet men shall harden their hearts against me. In the Church Student Manual it says, What will cause the love of men to wax cold? The expression is the same as that found in Matthew 24, where we read, And because lawlessness has abounded, the love of many, well, this indicates more than a few, shall wax cold. Love here means Christian unity or harmony. And have we not witnessed countless examples of lawlessness abounding since COVID-19? Examples that have divided us and destroyed harmony and unity in the world? The love of men waxing cold one toward another is the hardening of their hearts against the Lord. And continuing further in verse 33, And they will take up the sword one against another, and they will kill one another. There are more than 45 armed conflicts currently taking place throughout the Middle East and North Africa in the following territories: Cyprus, Egypt, Iraq, Israel, Libya, Morocco, Palestine, Syria, Turkey, Yemen, and Western Sahara, not to mention widespread conflicts in other areas, such as Ukraine and Haiti. I believe we can safely state that this verse has also been fulfilled. Now let's move on to verses 34 and 35. And now, when I, the Lord, had spoken these words unto my disciples, they were troubled. And I said unto them, Be not troubled, for when all these things shall come to pass, ye may know that the promises which have been made unto you shall be fulfilled. Where have we recently been counseled to learn and understand the promises made to the covenant house of Israel? In 2020, President Nelson counseled us as follows. As you study your scriptures during the next 6 months, I encourage you to make a list of all the Lord has promised He will do for covenant Israel. I think you will be astounded. Ponder these promises, talk about them with your family and friends, then live and watch for these promises to be fulfilled in your own life. And what is the crowning centerpiece of these promises or covenants made to the house of Israel? And it shall come to pass that I will establish my people, O house of Israel. And behold, this people will I establish in this land, unto the fulfilling of the covenant which I made with your father Jacob, and it shall be called a New Jerusalem. And the powers of heaven shall be in the midst of this people, yea, even I will be in the midst of you. But my people will I preserve, and righteousness will I send down out of heaven, and truth will I send forth out of the earth, to bear testimony of mine only begotten, his resurrection from the dead, yea, and also the resurrection of all men, and righteousness and truth will I cause to sweep the earth as with a flood, to gather out mine elect from the four quarters of the earth, unto a place which I shall prepare, an holy city, that my people may gird up their loins and be looking forth for that time of my coming. For there shall be my tabernacle, and it shall be called Zion, a New Jerusalem. Redeemer of Israel, our only delight, on whom for a blessing we call, our shadow by day and our pillar by night, our King, our deliverer, our all. We know He is coming to gather His sheep and lead them to Zion in love. For why in the valley of death should they weep, or in the lone wilderness rove? How long we have wandered as strangers in sin, and cried in the desert for Thee. Our foes have rejoiced when our sorrows they've seen, but Israel will shortly be free. As children of Zion, good tidings for us, the tokens already appear. Fear not, and be just, for the kingdom is ours. The hour of redemption is near. Restore, my dear Saviour, the light of Thy face, Thy soul cheer and comfort impart, and let the sweet longing for Thy holy place bring hope to my desolate heart. He looks, and 10,000s of angels rejoice, and myriads wait for His word. He speaks, and eternity filled with His voice re-echoes the praise of the Lord. Verses 34 and 35 are being fulfilled as we speak for all of those saints witnessing and recognizing the signs of the times. They are not troubled by the events around them. They know that the promises made to them as part of the covenant house of Israel are about to be fulfilled. That Zion, the New Jerusalem, is about to be redeemed, and those that have followed the counsel of the Lord's prophets will be able, ready, and worthy to receive the Lord when He comes again. A people who have already chosen Jesus Christ over this fallen world. A people who rejoice in their agency to live the higher, holier laws of Jesus Christ. And also, in the words of President Nelson, think celestial. The generation that will see the second coming is identified. We have witnessed the fulfillment of the prophecies immediately preceding the Lord's coming to His saints in Zion. Time is up. Are you ready to receive Him? Are you ready for Zion? Brothers and sisters, once again, thank you so much for listening to this presentation today. We love you. Come link arms with us. Zion cannot be built without a group of righteous saints just like you, and part of that preparation will need your help together. Links to our Zion or Bust group, Facebook and Discord, always provided below. We are Zion or bust.